prophecy carved in starlight, twin souls, one to summon the end, one to halt the fall. Kaelen and Darius, blood-bound yet divided, one heals, the other dreams in shadow. Kingdoms trembled, old cults wake, destiny fractures like glass, and when light refuses to slay its mirror, balance is born. The temple of Valerian stood high in the frozen peaks, its obsidian spires spearing the clouds like dark fingers clutching the heavens. Within its sanctum, under the flickering light of celestial fire that danced eternally, across the carved walls lay the oldest of truths, etched not by hands, but by divine convergence. The prophecy had been burned at the stone by the tongues of starlight itself. When the twins of mirrored souls are born, one shall summon the end, the other shall halt the fall. Only one may remain when judgment comes. For centuries it was dismissed as myth, but when the skies darkened with both sun and moon in rare convergence, and twin cries echoed from a mountain midwife's hut, the monks of Valerian began to prepare. Kaelen and Darius were born moments apart in the quiet village of Varus Crest, where snow melted into spring-fed streams and the wind whispered through pine and stone. Their mother wept with joy, unaware of the world-altering weight placed in her arms. The village's superstitious but kind celebrated the boy's birth as a blessing, a duality of fate, light and dark, life and death entwined. No one spoke of the legend aloud, but many remembered. As children, the twins were unbreakable. Kaelen had a quiet steadiness in his gaze, eyes like calm water reflecting sunlight, his hands always warm. Darius, louder and quicker to laugh, moved like fire through the village, thrilling and unpredictable. They knew each other's thoughts before they were spoken. When Kaelen scraped his knee, Darius winced. When Darius was punished, Kaelen cried. But as adolescence bled into early manhood, subtle differences became widening cracks. Darius began to wake from dreams he couldn't remember, drenched in sweat and whispering in forgotten tongues. His presence unnerved animals. Fruit spoiled near his breath. The sky above him often turned gray. Meanwhile, Kalen's touch closed wounds, calmed the mad, and on more than one occasion, stilled a lightning storm overhead. When Brother Aldros, a wandering monk of the Star Path Order, visited Varus Crest and observed the boys, he did not smile. His eyes narrowed, his fingers trembled over prayer beads carved from fallen meteorite. That night, he requested a private audience with the village elder and their mother. By morning, Kaelen and Darius were on horseback, bound for the temple of Valerian. The temple air was cold and reverent, like time itself held its breath within the stone. There, the high seer Lyran, a woman who had not blinked in 30 years, laid her gaze upon the twins. She placed her palms against their foreheads, and her breath hitched. "The prophecy," she whispered, "has found its voice again." Kaelen stood still, serene but sorrowful. Darius trembled. Something writhed behind his eyes. A voice, low, ancient, and insistent, coiled through his thoughts. It whispered not in threats, but in promises. Power, purpose, freedom. "The shadow has chosen," Lyran said, "but the light has not retreated." Both boys turned to face one another. Neither spoke, the fear forming on their tongues. Neither dared believe the truth. Neither, despite what the world demanded, could imagine raising a blade against the other. Not yet. News of the prophecy rebirth spread like wildfire across the fractured realms. Kingdoms, once allied, turned inward, whispering of omens and extinction. Old cults stirred from dormancy, painting temples in ash and blood, claiming the prophecy had been misinterpreted. Some declared Darius a cursed vessel that must be destroyed before the darkness claimed the world. Others called Kaelen a deceiver, hiding true malevolence beneath golden light. In courts and crypts alike, wagers were made on which twin would die, and which should. The temple of Valerian, once a refuge, became a trap. The brothers fled under a storm-racked sky, abandoning their cloaks and names to the wind. Kaelen clutched the prayer beads gifted by Brother Aldros, whispering mantras not for guidance, but to anchor Darius. His brother walked behind him in silence, face taut, jaw clenched, every movement sharp as broken glass. Darius barely slept, and when he did, his dreams spoke in voices that weren't his own. Their path took them through ash valleys and forgotten woodlands, where the wind carried whispers and animals watched with glassy, haunted eyes. At night, the world bent, Shadows slithered unnaturally. Kaelen awoke once to find Darius levitating, eyes rolled back, mouth murmuring in tongues long dead. When Kaelen touched his arm, the darkness shrieked and scattered. The next night, they were attacked. The creature had no shape at first, just movement in the fog, a disturbance of breath and heat. Then it lunged from the brush, a snarling mass of void and bone, eyes like dying stars. Kaelen acted on instinct, his hands ignited with light, pure, blinding, untrained. The beast howled and vaporized into black mist. Darius watched, breathless. What are we becoming? He asked. The question haunted them until they reached the cliffs of Ashir, where time itself grew thin. There, in a cavern where no torch could hold flame, dwelled the Oracle. It had no face, no gender. It was a swirl of shifting form, held together by time's own gravity. Its voice came as if from within their skulls. You seek truth, but truth is a prism. The Oracle revealed what no seer or scholar had known. The prophecy was incomplete. If one twin kills the other, it said, the world is judged not by destiny, but by the soul that survives. Light or shadow, hope or ruin. But if neither perishes, a third path may yet carve through fate, one not foreseen. The silence afterward was unbearable. Darius' hands trembled, his voice cracked. Then kill me, now, before I lose myself. Kaelen stepped back. No, there's still time. They're not, Darius roared. I hear them. Every hour, they're in my skin, Cal. My bones. That night, Darius sat at the cliff's edge long after Kaelen fell asleep. Beneath the stars, he stared into the abyss, listening. When Kaelen awoke, his brother was gone. Only a scorched handprint remained, burned into the rock, and the sky above had darkened once more. The ruins of Varoth stood in silence, untouched by time, but not by consequence. Jagged stone spires pierced the mist, some scorched, some weeping light through ancient cracks. Once a sacred nexus between light and shadow, it had long since been abandoned, sealed off after the great sundering, when balance was lost, and the world teetered on ruin. But Darius felt drawn to it, as if by blood. The whispers had grown louder with every step, guiding him to the forgotten core, where night first bled into the fabric of reality. Darius stumbled through the shattered archway of the sanctum. The runes on the walls pulsed back, the earth beneath him shivered, and then he felt it, a presence older than God's, vast and formless, coalescing in the void before him. With unspeakable words, it entered him. Thoughts that were not his twisted around his spine like a second nervous system. It called itself Nyros, the shadow of the first silence, born in the instant before light dared to shine. You are not a vessel, Nyros whispered. You are a blade, and blades are forged to cut. Darius dropped to his knees, tears tracing suit-covered cheeks. I wanted to stop. The pain, the voices, the fear, then merge. Let us become singular. Purpose, power, peace. The last of his resistance snapped. Flames of void erupted from his skin. His eyes turned molten black. The ruins howled as if mourning. Darius was no longer alone. When Kaelen arrived, it was already too late. Black fire danced across the temple ruins. Creatures of shadow, limb twisted and shrieking, crawled along the broken stone. And at the center Darius stood, floating, encased in a vortex of darkness. His voice, no longer his own. One must fall for the other to rise, Nyros declared, speaking through him. The prophecy is fulfilled. You were born to be my tether, Kaelen, and now you are obsolete. The sky split open with a sound like a scream. Light refracted, tearing across the world as distant lands erupted in sudden chaos. Cities fell to riots, mountains cracked, magic itself unraveled. But Kaelen didn't draw his blade. Instead, he stepped forward. His heart broke at the sight of his brother, eyes hollow, soul distant. But he remembered something no prophecy accounted for. The glyphs carved beneath their cradles at birth. A failsafe. A buried key. Kaelen's palms ignited with ancient light, not cast by sun or spell, but by will. A countermeasure woven into his very essence. He whispered the names from the cradle glyphs and extended his hand. The tether, golden and pure, lashed into Darius' chest. Darius gasped for a breathless moment. His eyes flickered, gray again. His again. Kaelen surged forward. Now, Darius, Help me, push it out. Together, light from Kaelen, will from Darius. They pulled. Nyros screamed, unraveling like a storm made flesh. Darkness roared as it tore from Darius' body, cracking the earth beneath them. But Nyros did not die. Freed from flesh, the entity rose, towering, formless no longer. Wings of obsidian, eyes like collapsing stars, a voice that made mountains tremble. It had a body now, and it was angry. Nyros rose above the broken world, a god of ruin, reborn in flesh. His form eclipsed the sky, wings wide enough to block constellations, voice echoing in tones that cracked mountains, silenced prayers. The ruins of Eroth disintegrated beneath him, a mosaic of floating stone and burning mist. Reality bent, reshaped by his presence. Time faltered, stars blinked, and gravity wept. The world teetered on the edge of its final breath. Kaelen stood bloodied, his aura dimmed, the countermeasure flickering in his hands like a dying flame. Beside him, Darius collapsed to one knee, his limbs trembling with exhaustion. The black fire had left him, but its scars remained beneath the skin, humming with residual shadow. His voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. "He's too strong. You should have let me die." Kaelen looked at him, not with pity, not with fear, but with unwavering love. "You were never the enemy, Darius. The prophecy was never about which of us must die. It was about what we could become together." As if answering his words, the glyphs on the shattered earth glowed again, light and shadow in tandem, pulsing like a heartbeat. The truth clicked into place like a puzzle long forgotten. Two halves of the same soul, divided only by fear, but united. The cycle ends. Kaelen reached out his hand. Darius hesitated, the shadows within him twitching like snakes. But then he took it. Their hands clasped. Light and shadow surged. The world shook. A shockwave erupted from their bodies, not of destruction, but balance. Kaelen's golden aura flared, fed by the countermeasure's original seed. The glyphs etched into him since birth. Darius channeled his own power inward, taming the chaos within, and forming rings of obsidian sigils around Nyros. Nyros shrieked, lashing out. The battle became chaos incarnate. Storms ripped the skies, laced with memory and fire. Twins were flung through collapsing landscapes, visions flashing in every direction, cities drowning in fire, oceans swallowing kingdoms, their mother's face weeping under a broken moon. But they held on. Kaelen floated into the vortex, eyes radiant, arms outstretched. "Now," he cried. With a roar of finality, Kaelen unleashed a beam of primordial light, straight into the pulsing, coiling heart of Nyros. At the same moment, Darius twisted his fingers in the air, weaving spectral glyphs, sigils of restraint, memory, unity. They carved through space like chains, wrapping Nyros' limbs, pulling his essence into patterns of light and dark. The glyphs weren't weapons, they were truths, binding Nyros not with violence, but with purpose. "You are part of the cycle, but the cycle ends with us." Nyros screamed, his voice a thousand storms, before his colossal form cracked. First the wings, then the spine, then the core. The entity shattered into stardust, pulled upward by a wind that did not blow. His essence scattered across the world, stripped of malice, transformed into silence. And the sky cleared. Kaelen collapsed beside his brother. Darius, breath ragged, laughed, a low, broken sound of relief. "Did we win?" Kaelen smiled faintly. "We did, and for the first time in generations, the world exhaled." Dawn broke over the shattered peaks of Eroth, casting gold across the ruins where once a god of shadow had risen. The air was still, reverent, not with silence of fear, but the hush that follows a deep exhale, the kind that settles when the world has survived something ancient and nearly final. Kaelen stirred first. His body ached as if the light he wielded had been pulled from bone and soul alike. His fingers twitched against a cold stone, brushing dust that shimmered faintly in the morning sun. Dust that once was Nyros. The darkness was gone, truly gone. A groan nearby. Darius slowly pushed himself upright, his cloak torn, but his eyes, his own. There was no shadow in his breath, no voices in his mind, just wind and sky, and the warmth of a brother's gaze. For the first time in their lives, the space between them felt light, unburdened. The prophecy that had loomed like a noose around their souls was gone, shattered not by blade or sacrifice, but by choice. Kaelen looked toward the horizon where war had once brewed, No storm followed, no omen lingered, just birds returning to broken trees, and light warming the frost from stone. They stood together on the edge of the cliff, the ruins behind them, and the world ahead. Brothers, whole. When they returned to Varus Crest, the mountain village erupted with awe and disbelief. Farmers laid down their tools, elders wept at the sight of both boys returned. The legends had told of a sacrifice, of the vision, of blood, but instead, 2 sons had come home. Word spread quickly through kingdoms across borders, even into lands that had readied armies in fear. The tale was retold in taverns and temples alike, not of a hero who killed his brother, but of twins who rewrote fate. Kaelen and Darius became symbols, not of war or judgment, but of something rare. Unity. Temples redrew their murals. Glyphs that once split the twins apart were now painted in spirals, joined in harmony. Or once it was written, only one may remain. Now there is a new inscription, carved in the stones of Valerian. Balance is not born, it is chosen. On the final night of their return, the twin moons rose in perfect alignment, one pale silver, one dusky red. Kaelen and Darius sat side by side beneath the old tree where they once played as boys. Darius broke the silence. "Do you think we were ever really meant to destroy each other?" Kaelen tilted his head toward the stars, then toward his brother. A slow smile touched his lips. "No, we were meant to remind the world it doesn't need to be light or dark. It just needs balance." The wind rustled through the branches, peace settled into the earth, and as the moons watched, the last thread of the prophecy unwound, not in death, but in freedom, a tale of deliverance, a choice made, and a world reborn.